Good. Okay, so welcome everybody to the 2020 Pascal lecture. This is probably the first time we've had such a format for the Pascal lecture, and it's probably all of us getting used to this new format anyway. So just to let you know that the Pascal lecture is funded by a very generous gift from Dr. Roy Roberts, who used to be a member of this department, an academic member of this department, but had to retire early because of ill health, and he very kindly endowed this lecture. So, and we have this every year. And also we are at the same time celebrating, just a tiny bit late, we're celebrating Black History Month, which is a month-long tradition of celebrating achievements of the Black community. Began as a way of remembering important people and events, and it's now celebrated every October. And in particular, we have decided, or we very kindly had the pleasure of a talk all about the contribution of Black role models in mathematical sciences, so which is going to be delivered by Dr. Nira Chamberlain. The title is, as you can see, is going to be Black Heroes of Mathematics. So Dr. Chamberlain is the current president of the Institute of Mathematics and Applications, the IMA. It's more than 25 years of experience of writing mathematical models and simulation algorithms, solving complex industrial problems. He's developed mathematical solutions within many industrial sectors, including spells in France, Netherlands, Germany, and Israel. And in 2015, he joined the exclusive list of 30 UK mathematicians who are featured in the autobiographical reference book, Who's Who. He's held visiting positions in many prestigious universities. And so I think what we would normally do at this stage is we would have a round of applause as we introduce Dr. Chamberlain. So I'm going to put my applause symbol, but nothing seemed to have happened there. So maybe Dr. Nira, over to you.
All right, well, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for inviting me to deliver this Pascal talk. Right, so the title of the talk today is The Black Heroes of Mathematics. And just to let you know that what we had, the Institute of Mathematics and Application with the London Mathematical Society, the British Society for the History of Mathematics, and the ICMS, we held a conference on the 26th, 27th of October called the Black Heroes of Mathematics. And what you'll find, if you go onto the ICMS site, you will find some recordings of other talks there, not only this one, but other talks there talking about Black mathematicians from all around the world, from Africa, from the United States, from the Caribbean, from the United Kingdom, talking about giving technical presentations or testimony presentations. So if you enjoy this talk, certainly go into that website. So what we'll do is this talk will start off with a bit of music. Then after the music, this is when this presentation will formally start.
Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, it's like this, y'all. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name. He doesn't need his name up in lights, he just wants to be heard, whether it's the beat of the mic.
May 2019. My talk starts in an event that occurred in May 2019. In May 2019, a new and exciting mathematical website started called Mathemagon, and it stated that mathematics is indisputably the greatest subject in the world. Why? Because everything in the world follows mathematical laws. The motion of stars, galaxies. Mathematics teaches engineering to engineers. It teaches science to scientists. It teaches economics to economists. Mathematics is truly the greatest subject in the world. But a question is, who are the mathematicians behind mathematics? it goes on and says, well, you have people like Euler, Turing, Germain, Gauss, Lovelace, Nash, Ramanujan, Erdos, Mazenidin, Leibniz, Fermat. But stop. Where are the black mathematicians? I repeat, where are the black mathematicians? Now, I actually posed this question to this website and saying, look, where are the black mathematicians? There's a whole group missing. But I'm not the only person to ask this question. In a recent article in the New York Times, a journalist said, what I learned while reporting on the dearth of black mathematicians. And the question was, are black mathematicians, are they hidden or they don't exist? Well, unfortunately, when it comes to the black community and black people, in mathematics has a bit of a checkered history. In 1969, the American Mathematical Society, which is one of probably the most influential mathematical societies, learner societies in the world, its membership, its council membership, actually rejected a resolution to address the shortage of black and Hispanic mathematicians in its rank. Now, this was done in 1969, but because of that, it has some consequences for today. In the United States, out of 46 million African Americans, there are only approximately 300 who have a PhD in mathematics. This is according to Dr. Eric Walker, who wrote the book, Black Mathematicians and the Pursuit of Excellence. But another example of mathematics checkered history was back in the 18th century, mathematics was actually used to justify slavery. This gentleman here, Thomas Jefferson, he was the 3rd president of the United States. Now, before that, when he was Secretary of State, he said this, that comparing them by their faculties of memory, reason, and imagination, it appears to me that in memory, the Negroes, that's black people, are equal to whites, but in reason, much inferior, as I think one could scarcely be found capable of tracing and comprehending the investigations of Euclid. Thus, in imagination, they are dull, tasteless, and anomalous. In the last 7 years, there was an article written in The Guardian, and it was talking about a certain journalist, and it was talking about the Field Medal, the Field Medals being the greatest, the highest prize that you could win in mathematics. And what it was talking about, what this journalist said, it said this, one of the journalists claims that, however, is true, is that there has never been a black winner of the Field Medal, which is the Nobel Prize of Mathematics. And according to this journalist, he says this is a civilizing consequence. And what he goes on to say that this actually implies the absence of black winners means that black people are incapable of genius. Now, the article also, this New York Times article that I talked about earlier, also did a survey, and the people claim that the reason why there are not that many black research mathematicians is because African Americans are not as intelligent as the other races. So this highlights one of two factors that's going on here. One, from the society point of view of low expectation, but there's another which is more internal, which is called stereotype threat. So as me, as a black person, and if I actually pursue mathematics and if I actually fail at it, would I be actually proving one of the stereotypes statements about black people, which is one of the 5 pillars of racism, is the belief that black people are intellectually inferior. My name is Nira Chamberlain, and this is my story. Now, this is me when I was about 7 and 8, and back then, all my friends were into things like Superman and Batman and Spider-Man. But with me, I like picking up calculators and pressing the buttons until it would flash at me. You know, I didn't think I was trying to pretend that I was some sort of, let's say, super mathematician. Yeah, and so, but that's what I used to do. I used to like playing all these mathematical and logical games. Yeah, and when I went into secondary, you know, but one of the things I realized is that back then, you know, going through school, was that there were no black heroes of mathematics. You know, the heroes that were out there that were black would tend to be sports stars and singers, yes? But when I went to secondary school and was coming towards my GCSE, I went to my careers teacher to get some careers advice. Yeah, and the career teacher said to me, "Goes, so Nira, what would you like to be when you grow up, and what would you like to do as a career?" And I said, "Well, I wouldn't mind doing something that involves logic and mathematics." And he said this to me. He goes, "Well, Nira, somebody of your physique, you should become a boxer." I said, "A boxer?" I said, "Yes, you should become a boxer." So I went home and I went home and I spoke to my parents. Now, my parents are from Jamaica. They came to England in the 1960s, and they're part of what's called the Windrush generation. And when I told my parents of what the teacher said to me about my career, my parents said this to me: "Nira, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician." I repeat, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. Now, I was very much off the age where I only, let's say, half believed what my parents were telling me. And I said, "Well, look, Mum, Dad, you know, Mum, you work for the in the NHS, and Dad, you work in a car factory, and like, but this is a teacher, you know, he says I can't do mathematics." And my parents convinced me to carry on. So I carried on, only, let's say, in a half-hearted way. So I did my GCSE, did my A-levels, did my degree, did my masters. But what I was, you know, I was what's called more of a fan of mathematics rather than being a mathematician. Using the, let's say, a football analogy, it's like if I was into football, I like going to football games and watching football players playing football as a fan, but I wouldn't go onto the pitch and play football myself. I didn't see myself as a footballer. I saw myself as a fan of football. So, and with me, what I like doing is I like going to mathematical conferences and watching all of these mathematicians doing all the crazy things on blackboards and whiteboards. That was what I like to do, but I never imagined myself being a mathematician. And one time I went to a conference up in Edinburgh called ICAM 99 and ICAM 99. And I was there, and all of a sudden I was surrounded by these group of mathematicians, and I said, "Hello, and who are you?" And they said this to me, said, "We are the Congress of African American Research Mathematicians." I said, "Really?" I said, "Wow." And one of them in particular came up to me and says this: "Nira, there are historical reasons why there are not many Black people who do a PhD in mathematics, but somebody of your enthusiasm and your passion, you should do a PhD in mathematics." And I thought, okay, so all excited and all enthusiastic, I went back to Birmingham. I found a certain university in Birmingham and sent off my application there to do a PhD in mathematics, and got interviewed, went in for the interview, came through the door, saw the professor, and the professor said this to me. He goes, "Nira, if you think that you can do a PhD in mathematics, you are naive and you are technically weak." And so I heard that and I thought, oh, okay. And then I went home and my parents said this to me: "Nira, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician." And I said, "Well, look, well, Dad, you know, out of respect, right? You work in a hospital. Dad, you work in a car factory. Now, what we have is that we have a professor of mathematics that says, I can't do mathematics. I had a teacher at school says, I can't do mathematics. So that's it. I'm done. I'm not doing mathematics. I'm done." So I abandoned being a maths fan, and my mathematical activities really went down to a minimum. Yeah. And then a number of years later, you know, this over here is my son Philip at the age of 4, and he went to his infant junior school, and the teacher asked him, he says, "Philip, what would you like to be when you grow up?" And Philip says, "Oh, I wouldn't mind being a mathematician." And this is what the teacher said to him: "Philip, you will never become a mathematician, but you might become a singer." And when Philip came home and told me this is what the teacher said to me, she said to him, I was really angry. I was really angry. I was about to go back to that school the very next day to give that teacher a piece of my mind. And then I said, "Look, wait a minute. No, actually, whose fault is this? This could be, let's say, my fault, because what my son has seen, he's seen me give up on my dreams. So how can I convince him to go and reach for the skies when I have given up my dreams?" And wait a minute, I realized that my parents advice to me was absolutely right. You don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. So I decided, right, what I'm going to be is I'm going to be a mathematician. So I decided to go for it. And what I did is I became what's known as a mathematical modeling consultant. And what I was doing was I was solving real world problems all over Europe. So what I would do is those projects which engineers or scientists find challenging from a mathematical point of view, I would do the mathematics and I would solve the problem. And I was, you know, working, let's say, in places like France, Israel, the Netherlands, Germany. And I was getting very much a reputation as being the go-to mathematician. You know, when you have a real world problem, I was the go-to person. And what happened one day, a Royal Navy captain approached me and says, Nira, I said, hello. I said, you've got a reputation of being the mathematician that solves real world problems using mathematics. I said, yes. I said, well, we have a problem. We have a future ship, which is very expensive to build, but is unaffordable to run. I said, yes. I said, do you think there's a mathematical way of you solving this problem? And I said, yeah, well, I said, it's like this. I said, have you ever heard the story Goldilocks and the Three Bears? And he says, you what? I said, yeah, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You see, it's like this. You see, like, there's a part of the story that goes like this. You see, Goldilocks, she goes into the house and she sees this porridge and she eats this porridge and says, well, this one's too hot. She eats the next porridge and says, this one's too cold. And then she eats this next porridge and says, this is just right. I was thinking, that's how you solve your problem. And he just looked at me and he went away and I didn't see him again for another 2 weeks. Then he came back to me and says, Nora, would you like to follow me? And I said, oh, okay, I'll follow you. So I followed him and I walked into a meeting that looked like this. And I said, hello. And I said, hello. I said, what's this meeting all about? And they said, well, this meeting is about us discussing about cancelling the Future Ships project. But we've heard that you've come up with a possible solution. I said, yes, I did. Yes, I have. And then it says, okay, would you like to tell us about it? And I says, okay, have you heard the story Goldilocks and the Three Bears? And it says, you what? And I said, yeah, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You see, Goldilocks, she comes into the house and she says, this porridge is too hot, this porridge is too cold, or this porridge is just right. I said, that is how you solve your problem. There you go. And then they said this to me. Do you realize that this project is of national interest and you are trying to come here and tell us some sort of nursery rhyme? I said, oh, okay, wait a minute. Let me be a bit more specific. Okay, it's like this. If you take the ship's design, link it to its capability, link it to its cost, what that does, it creates a whole series of nonlinear equations. You put that into algorithm, you write a computer program, and then you say that to that computer program, design me a ship that's not too hot, not too cold, just right, and then you will get a ship that's got a certain capability which is affordable. And here's an example. And I showed it to them and I said, oh, actually, we think that one could work. See, now that was over 10 years ago. See, the question is, would you like to see what that ship looks like today?
I must admit, I held my breath as she came here through the harbour entrance because it's so small.
We're a proud Navy family coming here to see the ship going in. My husband had worked on the programme, so it's been kind of a lot of our lives. In fact, our wedding cake was the Queen Elizabeth carrier.
It was brilliant, worth waiting for. It's a brilliant experience.
It'll take some time to build up the operating envelope and our understanding of the complexity of operating a ship of this scale. But we've done a lot in preparation for that, working with both the French and the United States Navy.
Okay, so that is the HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is the largest aircraft carrier that the Royal Navy has ever had. And somewhere on the ship, there is a placard that says, and Dr. Nira Chamberlain, and it's not only my name's there, there's a number of people's names are there, and it would remain on the aircraft carrier for the next but so yes, so I was working on, let's say, doing, let's say, mathematical modeling and doing the aircraft carrier. But one of the things I also wanted to do, was I actually started a PhD in mathematics, as well as working as a mathematical consultant. And what I did is I managed to find a supervisor that looked at the merits of my ideas rather than my race. Yeah. And so after a number of years, I completed my PhD, and so this is Philip, this is my wife Jacqueline, and this is my other son Nathan. So I completed the PhD, but something amazing happened. A couple of days after completing my PhD, I was named by the Science Council as being one of the UK's top 100 scientists. So I thought, okay, that's good, and they cite me for developing mathematical models that solve developing industrial mathematical modeling applications. So that was good. But 6 months later, this also happened. Now there is a book called The Who's Who. Now the Who's Who's been around since 1849. Now, if you are a person of influence, or you reach to your top of your profession, you get into the Who's Who, and you remain in the Who's Who each year until you pass away, and then you move on to another book called Who Was Who. Now, in 2015, there were 30,000 entries in the Who's Who, of which there are only approximately 30 mathematicians. And so we're just going through, some of those mathematicians. So you got is Professor Marcus de Soto, Oxford University. You got Timothy Gower, a professor, at Cambridge University. Andrew Wiles, the one that's famous for the firm at last theorem. And then you got a selection of other people who appeared in the 2015, like Roger Penrose, Ian Stewart, John Conway, John Coates, Michael Atiyah, Eric Zeman. But why was 2015 significant? Because 2015 was significant because that was the year that I actually got into the Who's Who. And since 1849, I was actually the first Black mathematician to get into the Who's Who. So I was thinking, okay, so I got my PhD, I delivered an aircraft carrier, I'm top 100 scientist, that's it, my mission is done. I'm done. I can now get on with the rest of my life. Yes? Wrong. I received this message from a Professor Magefi Fanken, who is actually the first Black female mathematician in South Africa to get a PhD in mathematics education. And she gave me this personal challenge. She said this: being the first is not something to be proud of, but it is a calling to ensure that one is not the last. I say again, being the first is not something to be proud of, but it is a calling to ensure that one is not the last. So I was thinking, wait a minute. So at the moment, I'm the first Black mathematician to get into the Who's Who, but I'm also the last. So I'm thinking, okay, well, so what can I do about it? Now, around about that time, I was, 2015, we was hearing about these rumors about a film called Hidden Figures, and it was about some female Black mathematicians who worked for NASA's, as they call themselves, human computers. But what I'm going to do is going to show you a short video about Hidden Figures.
It was the early 60s and America was on the brink. The Cold War was being fought in the sky while the civil rights movement was playing out in the streets. Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson were at the center of it all. 3 African-American women working as mathematicians at NASA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. They were actually called human computers by NASA officials, and their skills changed the space program forever. Johnson did the math that put John Glenn into orbit and helped make this possible.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Vaughan became NASA's first Black supervisor, and Jackson became the agency's first Black female aerospace engineer. Yet despite their impact, for decades, their stories were untold. and their place in history ignored. But thanks to Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, and Janelle Monáe, they are no longer hidden figures.
So the Hidden Figures was based on, let's say, these three female black mathematicians. And the lead one, Katherine Johnson, this is her in 2015, receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama. And what was interesting was that Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson, they worked for NASA in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Now, in one of those decades, I was actually at secondary school when the career teacher actually told me that I should not think about becoming a mathematician. I should become a boxer. So, but I did not know at that time that there were actually black mathematicians working for NASA. You know, that would have just totally would blow my mind. But also what's quite important is neither did my careers teacher. My careers teacher didn't know that there were black mathematicians working for NASA. So not only was these mathematicians were hidden from me, it was hidden from him as well. So, and another quite interesting thing was the mathematical consultant for Hidden Figures. His name was Dr. Rudy Horn. Now, do you remember when I was telling you that I went to a conference in Edinburgh and I was surrounded by all of these mathematicians, you know, the Congress of African American Mathematicians, and one of them said to me, Nira, somebody of your passion and your enthusiasm, you should do a PhD in mathematics. Well, that person was actually Rudy Horn. So that was, like I say, my connection to the film Hidden Figures. So with that, I decided, thinking, well, now let's say these mathematicians that actually are, let's say, hidden. I was wondering, are there other black mathematicians out there which are hidden, you know? And so what I decided to do is I decided to go to a various different Black History months events. And Black History in this country occurs in October, so I was going to different events trying to look for more information about black mathematicians. But every time I would go to an event, a Black History Month event, what I kept on finding Beyonce and Beyonce and Beyonce and Beyonce, you know, guess what? I am sick and tired of seeing Beyonce and Beyonce and Beyonce and Beyonce. See, my question is, when I go to these events, I say, where are the black engineers? Where are the black scientists? You know, I can't see none of them being represented. I keep seeing just Beyonce, Beyonce, Beyonce. And even more specifically, where are the black mathematicians? So I said to them, it's one place called the Black Culture Archives, I said, where are the black mathematicians? And they said, well, listen, we don't know about black mathematicians, but you're a mathematician. Let's give you a personal challenge. Can you do some research, find out whether there were black mathematicians, and then you let us know? So I took up that personal challenge and I decided to create a social media campaign called the Black Heroes of Mathematics. And so I put the social media poster up onto onto Twitter, onto Facebook, and it got some tremendous feedback from the American Mathematical Society, got from mathematical societies in South America and over in Asia, and I was getting feedback saying, listen, we don't know, we didn't know that such people actually existed and were into mathematics. Please tell us more. So I decided to turn this poster campaign into a talk. You know, version of this talk is what you're seeing today, but also I decided to create a music video. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to proudly introduce you to the Black Heroes of Mathematics.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, 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 oh, glory.
heavens, no man, no weapon formed against. Yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, the spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots be on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, oh. Now the war is not over, victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish, and then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, oh glory, oh, we'll cry glory, oh glory.
Now for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. They march with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes, to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, his power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald ego. The biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing, our music is the cuts that we bleed through. Somewhere in the dream we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history. No one can win a war individually. It take the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. The coming of the Lord, my eyes have seen the glory.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory,
Okay, now in that video, what I did say is that I did talk about one of the best right now, and one of the best right now is Kate Abiola Akikilulu. Now, she was the first, in 1997, she was the first Black mathematician to win the prestigious award for young mathematicians, mathematics researcher called the Sloan Research Fellowship. Now, why is that significant? Is because any American that tends to win the Sloan Research Fellowship, they stand a very good chance of going on and actually winning the Field Medal a few years later. So she won that in 1997, and 2 years later after that, in 1999, Terence Tahoe, he actually won the Sloan Research Fellowship. Now we know that he went on and won the Field Medal later on, a number of years later, and you know, it's regarded as probably one of the best mathematicians in the world. But why aren't we talking about Kate Abiola Akikilulu like this? Because Of all the black mathematicians there has been out there, she's probably been the one who's got the closest to winning the Field Medal, because she's won the Sloan Research Fellowship. And in 2001, she actually became the first African-American female to publish in the respected journal, the Annals of Mathematics. So, but one of the greatest of all times, it has to be David Blackwell. Now, what I'm going to do is going to show you a little short video of David Blackwell.
What were the odds this Illinois child would become one of the world's great mathematicians? David Blackwell was game to try.
I was always pretty good at mathematics. I don't know that I had favorite subjects. I studied whatever you were told to study. Did it as well as I could, but I looked forward to recess. I was a good student, mind you.
Such a good student that by age 22, he had earned a PhD from the University of Illinois.
There's a lot of luck in things. The man that I chose as my thesis advisor was far and away the best possible choice I could have made. His field, probability theory, turned out to have a lot of appeal for me. It turned out that I liked to think that way.
Blackwell wanted to teach mathematics, and he wanted to serve at historically black colleges and universities.
I got a list of all the black colleges from some almanac. And there were 105 of them. I wrote 105 letters. I actually accepted the first offer that I received as soon as I got it. And my really serious mathematical work started at Howard. At Howard, the intellectual atmosphere was just different.
Suppose that every day a machine produces a number, either 0 or 1.
In the mid-50s, Blackwell joined and soon after headed the University of California, Berkeley's newly created Statistics Department. Over the years, Blackwell continued to expand mathematics by introducing game theory, decision theory, and information theory into the field.
Let's suppose in particular that we knew that all these xn's were greater than or equal to a half.
David Blackwell, the first African-American elected to the National Academy of Sciences, dedicated to assisting disadvantaged students in the U.S. and Africa.
First, the advice I would give to young people generally is try everything and keep looking until you find something that you like.
So that was David Blackwell. But, you know, in my research, I found, let's say, there were more black heroes of mathematics. And these one are, you know, so there's one named George Akikulu, who was actually the father of Kate Abiola Akikulu, who is, to date, he's written about 290 papers on mathematics. So he's probably the most prolific black mathematician when it comes to writing papers. And then we have this one here. Her name is Talita Washington. Now, Talita has just recently, she's become a fellow of the American Mathematical Society, you know, for her work in mathematics and work in representation, because she's not only she's an expert in data science, she's also an expert in the history of black mathematicians. And then you have this lady here, Chaktail Jackson, who is a mathematical modeler, biology mathematical modeler, who models the growth of cancer cells in the body. You have this gentleman here, Professor Carl Graham, who is at the École Polytechnique in Paris, whose field is applied probability. This gentleman here, André Goyes, who was the past president of the National Association of Mathematics and was famous for writing and running articles called The Diary of a Black Mathematician, and has written a number of articles about black mathematicians' diversity and representation within the New York Times. And then you have this gentleman, Justice Aheto, who is a mathematical modeler and does statistical modeling, and is currently he's working with a number of the West African governments with their fight against COVID in that part of Africa. But one interesting person is here, John Urschel. John Urschel used to be an NFL player, and he gave it up to do a PhD in mathematics. Now, what he says in a book called The Living Proof, he says this: sometimes I find myself with young African Americans, would-be mathematicians, hearing them ask how I managed to get to where I am, and watching them hold back tears when they're talking about how being behind or feeling like they cannot succeed because they do not have the background. He goes on to say this: I have a responsibility to set a good example for young people everywhere who have mathematical talent, but may feel like they cannot succeed because they do not look like those who have succeeded before. I have a responsibility to succeed, not just for myself, but for my mother, my grandparents, and every minority who feels like the field is closed to them. So that's what he says. But what I have been doing, and I've been doing this for a number of years, is I support a number of charities. And one of the charities I support is something called Target Oxbridge. Now, what does Target Oxbridge do is they look at the top performing mathematical students who are of African descent or African Caribbean descent. And what we do is that we actually put on a 2-day mathematics masterclass for them to prepare them for Oxford and Cambridge University. And so in 2019, of these students, 9 out of these 11 students actually made it into either Oxford or Cambridge University. This year was a little bit different because of COVID. We had to do the course online. Yeah, but one of the things is Target Oxbridge asked me to come back to over and over again. So this is one of my favorite charities that I support. So in conclusion, Hidden Figures tells the story of 3 African-American mathematicians working for NASA. Now, there are many more hidden figures who show that mathematics is for everybody. But before we end there, I'd like to show you these 2 cartoons, one on the left and one on the right. This is negative and this is positive. The negative one comes from a newspaper in Canada, a newspaper article in Canada that was talking about a school set up to increase the number of Black mathematicians. And the newspapers decided to mock this initiative by putting a caricature of a Black mathematical teacher who's saying, "What's up, dog?" and showing that the mathematics is all wrong. To this side here, where we have a more positive image of Mara Jean Lee Brown, who's one of the first Black female mathematicians to get a PhD in mathematics. Yeah, and what I would like to do is I want to continue working to move from the images from the left to have images to the right. But there are some loose ends that I haven't finished talking about. So I'm going to stop talking here and I'm going to show you the other loose ends that needs tying up.
Dream we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history. No one can win a war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. The coming of the Lord. My eyes have seen the glory.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day.
Thank you for listening.